Welcome to the Voice of Senior Care. I'm Morgan.
And I'm Kiana.
And we're bringing families and the caregiving community together. Friendly Voices, the Senior Care Podcast.
Welcome back to Friendly Voices, the Senior Care Podcast. And I'm your host, Kiana James, and I have my co-host,
Morgan Williams.
And we have a special guest in studio today. We have Syed. And Syed, would you please tell our audience all about yourself?
Oh, thank you, Kiana. So I am Syed Rizvi with Senex Memory Advisors. Senex Memory Advisors are certified dementia specialists providing memory care living options for people with dementia at no cost to families using proprietary cost-saving tools. So we recognize that each individual situation is different. A certified dementia advisor meets in person with the family to understand their unique needs with respect to their financial, social, clinical, or legal situation. And after careful evaluation, we present options to the families, which can include in-home care or assisted living, or even a memory care as the situation may be appropriate. We have been in business since 2018, and we are located here in the town of Houston.
How did you get into this line of work, Syed?
So a lot of work that I do comes back to my initial experience growing up taking care of my grandfather, even though I was not a direct caregiver, but I did experience a lot of situations where we try to take care of him at home, and I could see the compassion and the work that's involved in the situation. Now, back in the days, we did not have a lot of options available.
Right.
So we had to, and this I'm talking about back in the 90s.
Okay.
So at that time, most of it is the family helping out. And when I was looking to have my own entrepreneurial career, I looked at several opportunities and decided this is something where I would be more impactful, because that's the only work I know where you make a living and you also at the same time are making a good impact on the society and the families. So really that's how I got directed towards the industry and the work that I'm doing.
It's interesting that you say that. So many of us get into this industry from personal experiences. A mom or dad, an aunt or uncle, a spouse, somebody that we love, we're taking care of. And then we just kind of fall into it as a business or industry professional. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is heartbreaking decisions when mom and dad have to leave their home. And we know it's a very touching subject. None of us are in the position where we truly understand what that feels like. I can only imagine being in that position and someone telling me, okay, now you have to leave. You know, I'm a very independent person. I don't want people telling me what to do. So I can only imagine the amount of emotions and everything that a senior is going through when in many cases they know that they're losing grip. They know that they're not able to do things the way they used to. And in many cases, they do know that they need to make a move, but they're in denial. So having many cases, it's grown children or someone else step in and say, well, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's not always well received. So we're going to talk about what do we do when your elderly parent refuses to move, and what are some tips we could talk about there. Once you do get them to understand that they need to move. What's a checklist of things that you need to do, and then some do's and some don'ts to help your elderly parents or loved one move. And then we're going to give an overview of what are the options. So first of all, let's talk about when your elderly parent refuses to move. So Syed, you are in a position where you deal with a lot of families on a daily basis that's going through this. Have you experienced this? Have you seen this? Kind of talk to us about what you think about this.
So I come across this situation very frequently.
Okay.
And a lot of the resistance arises from the adult children wanting to make a decision without sitting down, taking time, talking to their parents.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a mom or a dad or both, and really trying to have a conversation as to what are their challenges as parents living in their home, and also as adult children concerned about their parents.
Mm.
And a lot of times I've seen that the adult children do not go through that process. They just ram into the situation and say, Mom and Dad, well, looks like you guys have not been taking care of yourselves, and we need to move you to a community because they will take care of you. And I think that's the first. Whenever I go for a consultation with the family, I always want to go and meet them at their home. And there's a specific reason for it, because when I go and meet them at their home, I'm able to live in their environment. Because a lot of times when you walk in, you want to see, okay, what this person has to go through or experience every day. How is their house? I mean, what is the location? Are they organized? Is a lot of mail sitting on the counter? I mean, and when you go, also remember, when you're meeting in their home, they are at the most comfortable state of mind. So they will be very natural to you, because if you ask them to visit them to an office, then of course they are in a different frame of mind. It's like they're going to a doctor or and so for me, having them in their natural environment helps a lot. But this is a very big topic that a lot of families have not thought about. That why do my mom or dad not want to move?
Yeah, and there's a statistic I have here. The AARP study says 87% of people would prefer to age in place, so in their own homes. But we know, especially us as industry professionals, that's not always reasonable, that's not always practical based on their conditions. So one of the things that we always do with my agency when we're talking to seniors, we want them to remain as independent as possible, whatever that means for them. So accept some help, so we can hold on to as much independence as possible. And a lot of times the seniors think, okay, if I give up any help, any bit, or if I let them know that I need any type of assistance, then all my independence is gone. And we know that that's not true. So some of the practical reasons here, or advice that I have noted, is the first one is talking about assess the reasons why they should move. And that gets into what you were just talking about. So what do you think about that?
So that is the key criteria for making any decision. Why you want to make a change. And that is the primary question that we should ask ourselves in any situation.
Right.
That what is your expectation? And if your expectation is not being met, then why do you think is the case? And I think a lot of the seniors themselves have the ability to remain at home with assistance from providers. However, they have to make some adjustments to their routine. They have to make some adjustments in their expectations, because when you are in your 50s, 60s, or 70s, yes, you are a lot more mobile.
Right.
And in your frame of mind, you want to continue to do the same things the same way that you have been doing. But now you may have restrictions or limitations on your mobility. It could be just that a person is not able to transfer from the bed independently, and a caregiver can come in and do that in the morning and then back in the evening, right? So, and they can spend their whole day at their home.
Yeah, so that gets into some of these other points, just kind of all encompassing. It says realize they may insist on remaining at home, and then if that's the case, it talks about being understanding, determining if their home can be adapted. So try aging in place first. Can that be a possibility? You mentioned caregiving. That's what we do. Can they stay in their home with the caregiver? Maybe, just like you said, someone checking in on them during the day or in the evening. Trying all those steps, we find kind of can ease them into it to see, okay, does this work, does it not? And then reassess. This one right here I like is talking about being, and I'm really huge on this, being proactive versus reactive. So any thoughts about how families can be proactive? My opinion, or my experience, is most families we deal with or work with are in a reactive state. So what are your thoughts on that?
So procrastination is the biggest nation, as they say. So we all are a victim of it in our lives as humans. That's very natural for us. However, for some reason, we as individuals, whether it's ourselves or as adult children, we do not expect certain things to happen to us. It may be happening to the neighbor, it may be happening to the friend's mom and dad, but we cannot be going through because of how we perceive ourselves, right? And that is the flaw in the reasoning, which leads to people not being prepared. Right. So what people need to understand is that aging is a natural process, and as a certified senior advisor, that is something that we undergo professional training and certification for.
Correct.
To understand the aging process. So I tell people jokingly that my age group is 60 to 100, and if somebody comes in and they are 65 or 68, and I tell them, "Oh, you're very young," and they look at me like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you are in the very early stages of my demographic."
Yeah.
But really, a lot of what we see is we have to sit down and have a conversation and say, "Hey, let's see what are the possibilities." Well, let's, like they say, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Right.
And if we can just sit down and have a conversation, we do not control the future, but as long as we can at least have some ballpoint understanding of, or a ballpark understanding of where we can go if A happens, B happens, C happens.
Right.
That will allow us to be a lot more at ease.
And I want to touch on this a little bit more, but we do want to turn it over to our sponsor. So we're going to take a short commercial break. This is getting really good. So just stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
Singles. Do you feel it? The feeling like it's time to start having fun again? If you do, then you're ready to celebrate with Events and Adventures. There's never been a better time to join than right now. Meet new people with a packed calendar of fun events, exciting adventures, and future memories. It's time to live life to the fullest, to high five, skydive, and feel alive again. That feeling is here at Events and Adventures. If you're single and ready to celebrate, visit eventsandadventures.com to get started. That's eventsandadventures.com.
AT&T Fiber delivers a faster internet experience than cable. Ask me how to get 300 megabits per second for only $35 a month, plus taxes and fees, with no annual contract, no bundles required, and unlimited internet data included. Call Boss Up Houston Network at 832-895-5095. Again, that is Boss Up Houston Network at 832-895-5095. Limited availability may not be available in your area. Speed change based on the upload and download capacity of
and this is Boss Up Houston, where we look up, stay up. And where we look up, stay up. Stay up and boss up. This is Boss Up Houston, where we look up, stay up, and boss up.
Want to be a boss? Let's talk business. Let's talk fashion. Let's talk health, fitness, community, lifestyle, and finance. With Boss Up Houston, Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. It's Boss Up Houston, where we look up, stay up, and boss up.
Divorced or new in town, it's time to meet your match with events and adventures. Whether you're low-key or adventurous, come hang out with tons of like-minded people at exciting group activities. The best part? Everyone is single. From happy hours and trivia nights to outdoor adventures and weekend getaways, Events and Adventures has something for everyone. We're all here for the same reason. So come be part of a community made for singles. Your match is waiting for you to make your move. Visit eventsandadventures.com to get started. That's eventsandadventures.com.
Welcome back to Friendly Voices, the Senior Care Podcast. And in studio, we have Syed with us. And we're talking about when our elderly parents refuse to move. Kind of what do we do? We were talking about taking more of a proactive versus reactive approach. And so now we want to talk about when we are talking with our elderly parents, let's take an approach that's empathetic and compassionate. So Syed, tell us, what are your thoughts about how people can be more empathetic and compassionate? We know they're busy, they're rushed. Many families are in that sandwich generation where they're taking care of their kids and their elderly parents. It's hard to be empathetic and compassionate.
Yes, and this is one of the many points that the adult children miss. And I have seen so many families who come in with a decision that they have already made without considering what the other person's viewpoint is or how the other person feels. Because remember, they have lived in a home for a decade, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes I have seen people who have lived their whole life. I met a lady who actually grew up in that home. When their parents deceased, they gave the home to her, and she is now in her 80s. And it is so heart-wrenching just for me, because she probably has so many memories. Her whole personality is centered at that home, because that's where she has built a residence, and they have neighbors, they have memories. And for us children to come and talk to somebody and say, we need to move you, you have to approach that with a certain compassion and empathy. You cannot just come in and have a conversation without really asking the person, how do you feel about it?
Right.
At least ask them that if let's say this could be a possibility, what would be your initial thoughts about it? And asking or presenting a scenario to your parent will allow that person to give some feedback to you. And then you would also understand, okay, what is their initial gut reaction to it. So it is very important that we be sensitive to our parents because they have been used to a certain environment, and we don't like environment. And I always tell to families that I meet that after 40 it's very hard to change somebody. Right?
I've got 1 year past 40.
Well, I can tell you because I'm past it, and my wife keeps telling me the same thing, right? That I'm hell bent in my whatever I want to eat, whatever I want to do. And so I think that's true. And so think about it, if you're talking to somebody who's in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it's nearly impossible. Now, they may go along with what you want them to do, but they would be resistant to that.
Yeah. Now, during the break, we were talking about how important it is that we present alternatives to encourage their input. So getting them involved. and respecting their autonomy. Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
We have to start with a criteria of what is troubling you with respect to the current situation of your parents. And when you present to them and ask them whether that's a real hurdle in their independence, in their current living situation, it will bring you to the next step, which is what are the options that we can present or have so that those hurdles are removed and both the parents and the other children are happy with the outcome. And those alternatives, for example, when I go meet the families, I talk to them about bringing an in-home care provider, because I truly believe that should be the first port of call for every family. And there are a couple of good reasons for it. One, it is the cheapest forms of assistance, because you can have somebody for a few hours a day, a few hours a week, and it's not gonna break your bank, or you don't have to sell your house, or you don't have to dip into your IRA to do that. Because if you all need is somebody to give you or be there when you're bathing, because the son or the daughter thinks that you're fall risk, that is going to give them the peace of mind that we have a provider coming in, so mom is not alone, and it will also help you be safe when you're in the process of getting your shower. And so I discuss with them, I present them the options, and I ask them questions. What are your questions with respect to being at home with an in-home care provider? Okay. What are your questions if, let's say, we think an assisted living is a better option, or if you think maybe if the person is having cognition issues, or if they have been diagnosed with dementia and where they are having a severe deficiency of short-term memory, maybe we have to look at a memory care facility.
Right.
And giving that option gives them the sense of control, and I think that's important.
Yeah, that's so true. We're actually going through that with one of our clients, where the family member lives out of town, the client is here by themselves, has dementia, but the son, it was very important to the son to involve the parent in the decision making. Even though we know, there's a cognitive impairment there, but the client was able to come to a decision on their own and go into a memory care. So that can be very important.
So one of the criteria that I always talk to the families about is if you're going to be worried about your mom or your dad, okay, all day, then that is a point where you need to make a decision. Now, I do understand that if you want to have a care provider at home 24/7, it could be cost prohibitive, but majority of people would not need that. And a lot of times, even with memory deficiency, you can have providers come in and be there for 4, 6, 8, 10 hours, and remember, like, having somebody at home is I always say is the easiest step to take, because that involves the least amount of effort. You're not changing the person's environment. Right. You're not changing the person's lifestyle. You're not asking them to go into a community where they have to meet with a completely new set of people, learn their ways, learn their rituals, routines. So there's a lot of learning curve. But again, there are situations when a person is not safe at home just because they may be a fall risk and the family cannot afford a 24/7 caregiver.
Right, it's very expensive.
Then financial criteria becomes the primary criteria.
Yeah, and that's what I always say. A lot of times when families call us and are trying to figure out what to do, I said a lot of times it just comes down to budget. And once you know your budget, that's going to tell you what your options are. So let's say we get to the point, we've done all these steps that we talked about, and we finally get mom and dad to agree it's time to move. Like, there has to be a change. So we have here a checklist of what we could do once you get to that point of moving your elderly parents. So the first one talks about, what you were saying, keeping your parents involved. So keeping them involved throughout the process in that decision making as you make that transition. And, you know, they might want to go out, look at the places, kind of pick, oh, I like this, I don't like that. I know it was interesting when we were helping to relocate one of our clients, and one of the places that I took the client to was something I would love. It was really nice, new, fancy. And the client was just like, One of the older facilities that was more traditional, the client loved it. So, you know, having them involved in that decision part. The other is talking about asking friends and relatives for help. Organizing and downsizing. No, a lot of seniors, a lot of clutter. So
They've been collecting for a lot of years.
Collecting for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Planning ahead for moving day. So on any of those points on that checklist, would you like to say anything about any of that?
So all these are very important points. However, what I would say that when you decide that mom or dad needs to move, I would, being the position of my work, what I do, I would highly encourage all the listeners or viewers of the podcast to consider getting professional help from. So there is, somebody like me would be able to come in and understand what is important for the family when it comes down to going into a community. Okay, just going on Google or picking up a directory and looking at 10 names and then going and seeing is no different than picking the best among the worst. And the reason I say that to all the families, because everything that you see online or everything that you see in directories or paid advertisements most of the time, and they are telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Now, somebody in my position as an independent person and who is trained to help the families. So what I always say, there are 3 E's to senior living. Okay, is the right emotion, the right environment, and the right economic fit. And these things are something that I have to uncover when I meet with the families. And remember, it's not about the newest place that opened up in the town. It's not even about the closest one. I had a client family last week, and the person moved 10 miles away. Daughter and they used to live together in the same neighborhood, but then we ended up having that about 10 miles from where the daughter lived, and initially she was very resistant to that. But I had to explain to them that this is the right facility, and meaning the right facility sometimes takes a little bit of understanding what your care needs are. Okay, what is it that we are trying to address? Because at the end of the day, I always explain to the families, if you're going to move your parent to a community, then you got to make sure that you trust the facility to take care of anything and everything that happens. They should not be calling you at 2 a.m. and say, come and get your mom or dad. Okay. Yes, they need to update you, they need to inform you, but they should not be asking you, because you are trusting them with your parents. So that's the first step, is even before you go and select. But let's say if you think that you know which place they are going to like, you would probably want to ask them the questions about what is it that's important for them. What is it that they want to have in the new community or the environment? Because remember, assisted living are not like skilled nursing or hospital, meaning they're not governed by the federal regulations where everything is the same. When you go to assisted living, they're governed by the state regulations, and it's a very broad, vague regulation because they're providing assistance with activities of daily living.
Right.
So, you can have two facilities in the same area, and they totally will be different in what they can and cannot do.
We're going to talk a little bit more about do's and don'ts of helping your elderly parents move. But let's hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Events and Adventures knows how to make the most of being single. Get social, in person, try new things, and just have fun. Join Events and Adventures. We've been doing the single life right for over 30 years. 30 great events every month. Just visit eventsandadventures.com.
Married is for committed couples that are either engaged or married and would like to keep the dating in their marriage, fight for the family, and lower the divorce rate one couple at a time. We plan 30 to 50 events a month that include workshops, seminars, webinars, experts, and events all around town. This is for couples that want to develop friendships with other like-minded couples that take their marriage and vows seriously. We will also be offering premarital help so that you will not be a statistic. Would you and your partner like to take international vacations together with other couples and at group rates? When you are home, you will learn your city as you go to each new event. Your membership includes all of our locations. We take the guesswork out of creating, having, and keeping a strong marriage. Contact us today.
AT&T Fiber delivers a faster internet experience than cable. Ask me how to get 300 megabits per second for only $35 a month, plus taxes and fees, with no annual contract, no bundles required, and unlimited internet data included. Call Bus Up Houston Network at 832-895-5095. Again, that is Boss Up Houston Network at 832-895-5095. Limited availability may not be available in your area. Speed change based on the line upload and download capacity of internet speed and 500 and 1,000 versus Xfinity extension and possible and complements 1 gig, 1.2 gig cable services with uploads from 10 to 35 megabits per second. Download max 50 and 920 megabits per second and 1,000 speed vary not guaranteed.
Are you single? Maybe you're divorced or new in town. It's time to meet your match with Events and Adventures. Whether you're low-key or adventurous, come hang out with tons of like-minded people at exciting group activities. The best part? Everyone is single. From happy hours and trivia nights to outdoor adventures and weekend getaways. Events and Adventures has something for everyone. We're all here for the same reason. So come be part of a community made for singles. Your match is waiting for you to make your move. Visit eventsandadventures.com to get started. That's eventsandadventures.com.
Welcome back to Friendly Voices, the Senior Care Podcast. And we have our special guest, Syed, and we're talking about moving mom and dad. So we've gotten to the point where we've got them to agree to move. So now we're talking about some do's and some don'ts as it pertains to that whole process. So I have a list here, and we're going to discuss these, Syed, and it's talking about some do's and don'ts. So the first one on the list says, do let them get emotional. And I like the way it says, some of the happiest moments of their lives have occurred in their home. And you talked about that, how for some of these seniors, they have been there, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. For some of them, it's a generational home. So it's natural that they will be emotional. What do you think about that?
So, for a moment, if you think that you are moving from yourself, you move from one home to the other. And I recently moved, so I have a very fresh experience of doing this with my spouse. And we spent quite a number of days just pulling stuff and kind of experiencing the memories attached with those. And it's important because what you have to do is the big thing that I always talk to families is create a list of what you want to keep, what you want to give, and what you want to donate. Now, when I say give, it's if you want to give it to your grandkids or to kids or other family members. And of course, you make those lists after you have gone and seen the place and decided how much space it is, because if you're moving from a 3, 4, 5 bedroom house to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, there's only so much stuff you can put.
Right.
And so you come up with the bare essentials, what you want to take, and then you sit down and allow yourself ample time. Because if you're going to do this a weekend before mom or dad have to move, it's not going to get done.
Right.
So you have to give them, at least a month or a few weeks at least, where you systematically start and have them don't go and just move the stuff in the garage and say just pick. No, help them be there. Have them pick out stuff, because also a lot of times it's a matter of closure, because maybe mom or dad, they have some emotions about things and they are ready to let the emotion go, but they want this one last time that they want to be reminiscent of that period.
Yeah, it says give them the time and space that they need, and that's good points. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and like for in my case, it so happened that there was a really good piece of clothing that my wife had, which for me was totally trivial because it was really she hasn't.
Sounds like something.
Mine too.
She has never worn it, and she was not going to wear it. And I asked her the question that why do we even have this? And there was an emotional experience with that, because somebody she really regards well had given her a long time back.
Yes.
And for me, and for her, it was important that she revisits the memory and then have a closure before we decided that we're gonna donate it to somebody who can use it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And that was the other point which you talked about. Don't wait until the last minute. Give them time to get it together. Give them a whole month. Some might need several months depending on how much stuff they have to go through. It says do insist on downsizing. When you look at moving from a whole house to a senior living resident, you don't have a whole house worth of space. There's no way you can take the whole house there. So what are your thoughts on downsizing?
Yes, so downsizing is needed. I've not come across a situation where you can fit in a whole house.
Take it all.
But here's another thing that you need to be cognizant, that if you're going to move in a community, whether it's independent or assisted or memory care, a lot of the furniture is not going to be used. So dining table, courtyard stuff, because there's a lot of common area. Okay, your kitchen, because they would provide you with a lot of appliances if you go into independent or assisted, and so you're not going to use, and so a lot of your house item are going to be automatically kind of excluded. Okay, and that's one thing that when you visit and decide on the community, you have to ask them what's provided, what's not provided, and also understand everybody has that favorite piece of recliner. Everybody has that favorite bed sheet or their favorite pillow, and those are things that are important, that you need to put those separate. Those are quintessential. They need to go, because remember, you have to make sure that during the transition you have as much familiarity with the old environment for the person. So that way, if even if they go to a new environment in a community, but they still get to use their own bed with the same pillow sheet, they may not feel that big of a difference when they go to sleep.
Right.
I had a lady who moved into an assisted living, and she insisted certain items be brought from Kansas City to Houston, because that's where she lived with her husband who passed away. And when I went to visit her, her apartment was like literally full of her memorials, like things that she had collected with the husband over the course of time, and that gave her that sense of comfort that I may have moved out of my home where I live, but I still have his memories that I can revisit. Because if you go into a community and it's just like moving into a hotel where you don't remember anything, you're not able to have that reflection.
Yeah, I do think that would probably be my hardest, trying to eliminate all the stuff. And that got into the last point, Syed. It says, don't insist on what your parents should and should not keep.
Great. Yeah. And then it's really leave it to your parents. And like I said, if you keep a list of the items that you want to keep, give and donate, and they would be able to come up with a reasonable list. Yeah. And a lot of times, let's say if they want to keep a lot more than can fit in their apartment, rent or they're not sure what they want to do with it, rent a storage space. Okay, it's not gonna break your bank. It's probably gonna cost you $100, $200, few $100 to rent it for a month or 2 or 3, because once mom moves in and then she starts adjusting to the new lifestyle, she may come and say, oh, by the way, I don't think that we will need that.
Yeah, I mean, I even need that.
And I've seen a lot of that happening, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, good point. So before we wrap up, we want to just kind of talk about what are the senior living options. So within healthcare, we use a lot of acronyms. We talk about IDLs and ADLs and SNFs. But to the general public, we want to talk about what those are. So what is an IDL, independent living facility? What does that entail?
Okay, so to answer the question, let me answer. There are 2 other acronyms that we use a lot, which is IADL and ADL.
Right.
So ADL is activities of daily living, which is eating, bathing, dressing, transferring, toileting,
right,
which people do every day. Every person has to go through that in the normal course of day. And usually it is something that you need to do when you are from the childhood.
Right.
And then you have instrumental activities of daily living. Those are things that you usually do as an adult. For example, going to the bank, balancing your checkbook, ordering groceries, okay, or making a phone bill payment. So these are instrumental, meaning these are things that we have to do to live.
Right.
And these are activities usually which we engage in our adulthood. These are not, you don't go to bank in your childhood.
Right.
So it's important for families to understand the difference between IADL and ADL. Now, when you talk about independent living, the word independent means that a person is fairly independent in what they can do, meaning they can do the ADLs,
right,
and they can do the IADLs. Okay. Now, so the question is, why would somebody want to go to an independent living if they can do everything? Well, could be a couple of reasons. One is they are lonely because their spouse may have passed away, or they may have started experiencing challenges with food preparation.
Right.
Because a lot of people I have seen who have, let's say they may have arthritis, or they may have other condition where they cannot stand for too long, or they may have issue with their hand where they cannot knead a dough or hold utensils. So an independent living allows you to be in an apartment situation, have housekeeping provided by the community, have food provided by the community, and they will pay your utilities. Most of the places will cover everything. Some places may not cover cable and landline phone, but your Wi-Fi is included, your electricity is included, your water, trash, all that is included in your rent amount. Laundry is provided on site. You can pay them extra to have somebody do the laundry, but most of the independent living is just like an apartment living. However, they provide you with the food, they provide you with the utilities already included. And they also provide transportation. That's another thing. So if you have to go to a doctor, for example, or you have to go to the grocery store, because you can still cook, because in independent living, you
Right.
still have your gas oven, you still have your microwave, and they will provide you transportation to offices. So that's independent living.
Now, assisted living.
So assisted living is assistance with activities of daily living, and that's where when somebody reaches to a point where they would not be safe taking a bath by themselves, or they have reached a point where they are not able to transfer from their bed to a walker or a wheelchair without somebody holding them or without somebody being by their side. So the main difference in assisted independent living is that in an assisted living you have 24/7 caregiver supervision, meaning there are caregivers who are in the facility at all times. So if you need to go to the bathroom, you can push a bell, or I guess if it's a smaller one, you can just shout. Because we'll come to the depending on the size. But usually, you press a button, somebody will come in a reasonable amount of time, and then they can take you to the bathroom. So they provide assistance with activity of daily living. Let's say if you are incontinent, for example, right?
And you can't go to the bathroom.
Yeah, and you are on pull-ups, and let's say you need, it's time for you to change it. Somebody will come and change you. And again, it's when you need more hands-on assistance. And again, all the time, or you. So this question I want to address, because a lot of families ask this. When you have a provider come at home, they also provide assistance with activities of daily living, right? That's somebody will provide. So the only difference I would say for families to understand is, if you need scheduled assistance, meaning you need a provider to come and help you with cooking or help you with bathing or even transferring at scheduled times like morning, evening, then you can have somebody at home come.
Right.
But if you need assistance and you don't know when you would need assistance, that's when an assisted living environment is more suited, because you don't have to have somebody all the time sitting with you. It's on call.
Right. Now talk to us about, and we're going to wrap it up here shortly, talk to us about skilled nursing and then touch on personal care homes.
Okay, so the personal care homes are a form of assisted living, and assisted living are two types. One are large and one is, so it's a large, I'm talking about in the state of Texas. Yeah, they are large type and a small type. So a small type is assisted living that is licensed by the state for up to 16 residents, and a large type is a assisted living facility that's 17 and plus residents. Now, within the small type assisted living, you have a sub section they call personal care home or residential care homes also. And one of the main difference between a personal care home and a small assisted living is most of the personal care homes are found in neighborhoods. So they are an existing house which has been repurposed from inside, meaning they have gone through the fire marshal safety inspection, they have fire alarms, they still comply with all the state regulations that assisted living has to. However, they feel more like a home because they are an existing home. They just have wider doors for wheelchair accessibility. They may have a walk-in shower, for example. And a lot of the people who don't like the institutional environment of going into a commercial assisted living, like personal care homes, because they have more caregiver support. Usually in a personal care home, you would find anywhere between, I would say, 6 to 12 residents. That's kind of the general ballpark area of what they have. And they can handle a lot more higher acuity patients at a lower cost price.
Now with skilled.
So the skilled facility is a little different from independent, assisted, and personal care home because a skilled nursing, so there are two types of care. One is custodial care and one is skilled care. Custodial care is the care that is provided at home by family members, like helping somebody with medication, somebody helping somebody with meals, or transferring, toileting the ADLs. And you don't need to go through a school to do that. There are schools which help you go through those, but you can provide them. These are what we call non-clinical care needs. But then you have skilled nursing care, which essentially is care which is needed when somebody is severely sick. So somebody who has a wound, somebody who has just had a stroke and they are in a very fragile state, somebody who has trauma, or somebody who may be on a ventilator, or they may need antibiotics. Like for example, a lot of people who have urinary tract infection, they may need to go to a hospital, get antibiotics, and then because they need some rehabilitation, so they may be transferred to a skilled nursing facility. So one thing to understand for a skilled nursing facility is that they are a medical facility. They operate under CMS guideline, and they are covered by the insurance. So like independent assisted living or almost not covered by Medicare for your room and board. But at a skilled nursing, you get certain number of days provided by the insurance for rehabilitation and skilled nursing services. So, and because you cannot go to a skilled nursing unless you have a medical care need. And usually your doctor or your primary care physician, they are involved in the plan of care. And in the skilled nursing facility, you can only, one of the criteria, again, just to easy understand, is that a doctor or a primary care physician has to create a plan of care, and any service that is provided to you has to be by a licensed clinician. So whether it's a nurse or a therapist or a doctor, these are the people that are going to be taking care of you. And if you need those, then you have to be in a what's called a skilled nursing environment. And it's a temporary for most of the people, because once they get physical therapy, occupational therapy, or wound care, or even respiratory therapy if they're having issues with their breathing, after a few weeks they will stabilize, and then they will be able to go back to their home for long-term care.
Well, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. So some of you guys might want to watch it again because it's very, very, very helpful. We want to thank you, Syed, for joining us today so much, and thank you to my co-host Morgan. If you guys want to find us, you can find us at www.friendlyfaces.com. You can find us on Twitter, and you can find us on Instagram and on TikTok. Look us up, friendlyfaces_HOU. Look us up on LinkedIn and Facebook at Friendly Faces Senior Care. And please tune in to all of our episodes. We are here, Friendly Voices, the Senior Care Podcast, and we'll see you next time. Signing off.
Friendly Voices, the Senior Care Podcast.